So just with so many things happening all right now at the same time, it's just kind of weird timing with everything. But first, let's talk about Vancouver versus Edmonton. The Edmonton Oilers end up winning this series in 7 games. I think I predicted Oilers in 7 in my prediction video, I'm pretty certain. But first I'm going to talk about the Vancouver Canucks. It's been interesting, this series, these playoffs, but especially this series, watching Connor Garland go from a guy that Canucks fans wanted to trade. They didn't really see any value in keeping him around. But especially in this series, he became a fan favorite. And I think that's really cool to see, to see a guy win back, the fan favorite like that, because he kind of got the almost comeback started. In Game 7, he had that unassisted goal. There's another goal a couple minutes later. The Canucks obviously unable to get that third goal. They end up losing 3-2 in Game 7. But Connor Garland, it always felt like he was fighting this whole series. It felt like he was always pushing, giving it his all. And he's a guy who was getting criticized this offseason, or not this offseason, excuse me, but this regular season, by Canucks fans for not doing that. Connor Garland's always a player I liked. When he was in Arizona, I really wanted Vegas to trade for Connor Garland because I just love the way he plays the game. But the Canucks did have some issues. I still do not understand why they insist on playing dump and chase hockey with the personnel that they have. They have such great puck carriers on that team. They have really exciting offensive playmakers who can, make magic happen when they have the puck on their stick. But they kept playing dump and chase hockey, and it just doesn't make sense to me. With the personnel that they have, they should be playing a possession game, skill-based game. And I don't really recall them playing a dump and chase style of game in the regular season at any point. So it feels like this is kind of a newer development that's happened in the playoffs that doesn't really make sense to me. And you saw it in the Game 7 power play. They had 4 minutes worth of power play, and they did not register a shot on goal. They also had a bad power play in Game 6 as well. So, if you're the Canucks, I'm just like, if you have that many talented players offensively, Petey, Hughes, Miller, the list goes on, the guys that you have there, why are you playing dump and chase? Why are you running the power play that way? How are you not just putting it on net? Now they did have that amazing Game 1. They got 4 straight goals to win Game 1 at that point. I started thinking maybe the Canucks would take this series because of how good they looked. They fought their resilience. And again, they almost came back there in Game 7, but ultimately it was too late for them. On the other side of the ice here, the Edmonton Oilers and Stuart Skinner. I've criticized him a bit in my last video. Oilers fans have criticized him in the past. But this series against the Canucks, he looked really good. He was making very timely saves. Looked like a Vezina caliber goalie on the ice. Which, if you're an Oilers fan, where goaltending has consistently been an issue with this team, and then it looked like Skinner was kind of slumping a bit this season. Getting this now at a very opportune time in the playoffs from him it's very positive. It's a very good development. Another great development is Zach Hyman in this series. He's the leading playoffs goal scorer with 11 of those. And it's a guy that, coming in postseason, I wasn't expecting Zach Hyman to be the X Factor. Now you have Draisaitl who's on a 12-game points streak. You know, Draisaitl's been very noticeable. And what's funny is you look at the playoff stats leaders and you see McDavid up there. Obviously, you know McDavid's is really good. He's very impactful. But it feels like he's still kind of playing in second gear a little bit. I still feel like I haven't seen McDavid have to go hero mode, have to take over a game in these playoffs. And like I said, Draisaitl's been doing a lot of work. Hyman with the goals. But Edmonton has the top 4 players in postseason points are all Edmonton players. It's Draisaitl, McDavid, Hyman, and I believe Nugent Hopkins. And Nugent Hopkins had a huge Game 7. Another guy that's kind of, I don't want to say come out of nowhere, but a guy who it feels like he's playing above his usual level. He's really elevated his game. And right now in Edmonton, it feels like everyone's just kind of firing on all cylinders at the right time. This is probably, what's crazy is part of me almost wants to say last year's Edmonton team was even better than this one. But this one just feels like better coached or better chemistry. There's better chemistry in this squad. Which, if you remember where they were at to start this season, they clawed their way into the playoffs from a pretty bad position. And now they're looking absolutely dominant in the playoffs. Again, just goes to show how meaningless the regular season really is in an 82-game sport. So yeah, the Oilers, they beat the Canucks in 7 games. Now, a series that I got this prediction wrong. I thought Colorado in 7, Dallas takes it in 6. So the Stars win it in 6. But the big thing I noticed in this series is Nathan MacKinnon he felt like he was invisible most of the series. He was getting doubled on basically every zone entry when he did have the puck. You know, Dallas was making a point to shut him down. But MacKinnon also looked really bad on defense a lot this series. He was getting skated past. He looked lazy on defense. It's I understand conserving a bit of your energy for offense, especially when you're being doubled and worn down the way he was. But it's the playoffs. And that honestly goes for, all of the forwards for Colorado in general did not seem like they were playing good defense. I saw a lot of lazy forechecking, slow back-checking. The forwards seemed disinterested in playing defense at some points in this game. But not the biggest story, but a big story is going to be Nichushkin. He had 9 goals in 8 games. Ended up failing at drug testing, got suspended for, I believe, 6 months. But if you'll remember, last year, Nichushkin had the really weird thing during the Seattle series, which at this point kind of feels like it's been brushed under the rug a little bit. But he had the thing in Seattle where there was the woman that was supposedly a lady of the night. She was saying something about them taking his passport. There might have been some mafia connections. I believe he was also kind of getting into it with the police. I'm a little fuzzy on the details. But this is now the 2nd playoff series in a row where Nichushkin has some big controversial thing come up. And if you're the Colorado Avalanche, you have to be looking at that, being like, okay, he's putting up decent points here. So from a hockey perspective, that's one thing, but that has to be distracting behind the scenes. And speaking of behind the scenes, Landeskog, there's all these things that go, is he going to come back, is he ever going to play again? But in the meantime, you do not have him as a locker room presence, you don't have a captain. And for the sake of the competitive window, it might be time to move on because Colorado only has they only have 14 players signed. They have $16 million in cap, but I ice a roster, right? So there's going to be some big questions that the Colorado Avalanche have to figure out this offseason, roster-wise, to see if they're going to remain competitive. They're going to keep being a mainstay in the playoffs, or not, because I think, like, I saw things saying that they're already the favorites for the Cup next year, and they were eliminated round 2. But, like, the Las Vegas betting odds for the 2024-2025 playoffs has the favorites for the Stanley Cup as the Colorado Avalanche, who again were just eliminated. But I think they have a lot of roster questions to figure out. But one they don't have to figure out, Georgiev. He proved himself, in my opinion, in their Winnipeg series. Yeah, round 1. There's a couple bad moments from him, but I felt like he really kind of buttoned it up, even though they lost this series. So maybe they don't have the question marks in goal that I thought they might. But in this Dallas Stars team, as a Vegas fan, I've been on the other end of this. Their depth and their defense, they don't stop coming at you in waves. Now I do have to say, as a Vegas fan, I take a little bit of solace in the fact that we took them to 7 games. Colorado went out in 6. I felt like, Vegas was kind of the better team than Colorado in that instance. I feel like if we would have come out of round 1, we probably would have beat Colorado in round 2 as well. But the depth and defense of this Stars team is still just they're not taking any shifts off. It's like you'd be like, okay, well, their third line's on the ice now, so we can catch our breath a little bit. No, they're going to keep coming at you in waves. And they play hard defense. They play a physical game. And Ottinger continues to make really good timely saves. Ottinger is the only active goalie in the top 5 for goals against average for the playoffs. The other 4 have all been eliminated. The only active goalie in the top 5. And that Stars defensive system is really, really good at taking out opposing Stars. Like I said, with McKinnon getting doubled on the zone entries. That Dallas offense is set up, or if you're a team that does not have a lot of depth, if you're a team that is relying on 1 or 2 guys to make the plays, to make your, to get your goals, they're just going to take those guys out of the game. They're going to force somebody else to beat them. And a special shout out for Tanev. His X Factor, his defensive X Factor, he's been a +8 so far in plus-minus over these playoffs. And it just feels like whenever he's on the ice, you're not scoring, but Colorado probably will. Tanev has consistently been a menace. So now we're setting up a Western Conference final between the Dallas Stars and the Edmonton Oilers to see who gets to go to the Stanley Cup final. I'll give my predictions for that in a moment, but first we turn to the East. Talking about Florida and Boston, I believe I said Boston in 6 or 7. And we ended up getting Florida in 6. And I thought they looked better in this series than they did against Tampa Bay, even though that Tampa Bay series, only went 5 games. I feel like their offense looked better against this Boston team. In game 2, they won it 6-1, and that was that big Barkov game. Game 3, they won it 6-2. That's the game Marchand goes out hurt. Now they lost big in game 1. I believe it was like 5 or 6 goals against in game 1. And I saw that, and I was like, okay, well, Florida, maybe Boston, but no, then 3 straight wins after that game 1 blowout loss. Boston grabs one back there, which they might not have if not for that goalkeeper interference. But I have to say that Florida, Bobrovsky, he's really good at stopping opposing momentum. Like, anytime there's a moment where like the other team, like when Boston would have a breakaway, he would stop that. Or if they're having some sustained zone time, they get a good look, he would stop that. So I felt like consistently Bobrovsky would stop the big momentum shifting goals from going in, which is very important, obviously. And a friend of mine actually pointed out, that's very funny, the news came out the other day about the president of Iran dying in a helicopter crash. And my friend sent it to me, and he says Sam Bennett gets off the ice for 2 days, and look what he does. And finding that Sam Bennett brought down that bird, which you never know what he's capable of, Sam Bennett. Now on the other side, Boston, their scoring really dried up after that game one. They had that huge outburst game one, they looked dominant. But in the next 5 games, they only had a total of 8 goals. You know, a lot of those games ending 1 goal, 2 goals. You know, just they weren't getting any sustained offense. And I felt like they were really spending too much time in their own end. They were allowing Florida to get sustained zone time, to get momentum, to wear down their defense. And they choked a 1-0 lead 3 times in this series. There were 3 different occasions. Boston would get the first goal, end up losing the game. And I felt like really watching Boston, they were not shooting enough. You know, especially guys like DeBrusque, who did have a few goals this series, but it really felt like, you know, just shoot. Put the puck on the net, you might get a rebound, it might trickle through. Pucks on net has been like the defining saying for so long now. You have to shoot if you want to score, but so often it felt like Boston would just be passing the puck around looking for the perfect shot. But you know, that Florida defense, their physicality they bring, they're gonna get a body check, they're gonna break it up, they're gonna block it, and you're not gonna get that perfect shot, so you just have to shoot. But one silver lining coming out of this for Boston is Swayman says he's open to a long-term deal. He wants to stay with how good he's been, so I don't know. Now in the other series, we got the Rangers versus the Hurricanes. Rangers win this in 6. I think I said they'd win it in 5. And really for the Rangers, they only lost big in one of the games. One of the 2 games they lost, it was pretty close, although they did almost lose that game 6. They were watching that, I'm like, man, I don't think the Rangers want this to go to 7. It might not end. You know, even though it felt like they were consistently looking like the better team, and you know, the Hurricanes, especially at times, they were just making some dumb mistakes. But the Rangers had only one real big loss, but that game 6, and you have Kreider, he has that 3rd period natural hat trick that ends up winning them the game. They avoid the game 7 with him, just a huge showing from him. And to this point, and I'm saying this now because I think this is going to be important for a prediction later, but the Rangers have one of the best special teams in the playoffs. They have 11 power play goals and 4 short-handed goals so far in these playoffs. I did just kind of a quick check. I think they have the most power play goals of any team in the playoffs, but they might be like number 2 or 3, but I'm pretty sure they're number 1. And obviously winning the series as early as they did, they're getting lots of rest before game 1. I think they're getting like 6 days of rest. Now on the other end, the Hurricanes, you guys know I've talked about this a lot. Seth Jarvis is one of my favorite players in the entire league. It came out today that he's been playing with a torn labrum and a torn rotator cuff in these playoffs, but even playing through that, he had 9 points in 11 games. I think he's up for a contract extension. The Hurricanes would be stupid not to extend him, in my opinion. Like I said, one of my favorite players in the league. I think he's one of the best. Even though people know he's good, I feel like he's still underrated as a 2-way player. And the big story about this, obviously, off the ice will be the social media and the Cry shirt. Now I have my own opinions about this. I try not to get to any, I try not to bring, my light just died. That's very, very unfortunate. Hold on. Alright, so I have this big white screen open instead, hopefully, but, like I said, I try not to bring my own personal stuff into these videos, like, to a certain degree, like, I'll never tell you guys the teams I like or dislike. And me saying that, well, I'll tell you the teams I like, not the teams I dislike. And me saying this isn't saying I dislike the Hurricanes, but I feel like when they did the bunch of jerks thing, that was good. They took something that Don Cherry, who was very out of touch, said, and people disagreed with him, and they turned it around. And they turned that into an identity thing for the team and for the fan base. But everybody was behind them when they did that because everybody disagreed with the person saying it. This whole like cry social media thing they've been doing, it feels mean-spirited. And it makes me feel like they don't understand why the bunch of jerks things worked. Like, the bunch of jerks thing worked because everyone else was on your side. The guy who said it was the one being the jerk, ironically. But like I said, this feels mean-spirited, it feels out of touch even. But that's neither here nor there. Anderson, I don't know why they gave him the net. He let in a couple soft goals this series, not to say the Rangers wouldn't have won anyway, but they could have probably gotten a Game 7 at the very least if Anderson was sitting, and that you have Kachekov, who I feel like he'd earned the net, that he'd earned the opportunity to start in the playoffs. But the problem was, even after a couple of bad games, they wouldn't pull Anderson. It's like, do you feel like you owe him or something? And really, it felt like Rod Brindamore refused to make changes this series in general. Like, whether they were winning, losing, he wasn't mixing up the lines, he wasn't changing the tactics. He's like, we're gonna play our game, whether it's working or not, and ultimately that was to their detriment. So the Rangers win that one in 6, setting up the Florida Panthers versus the New York Rangers in the Eastern Conference Final. Now, the Western Conference Final. This Dallas team feels like the perfect matchup for this Edmonton team because of their ability to lock down on defense, because of their depth. It feels like this Dallas team, with their physicality, the way they play, the way they can trap, it feels like they can really cause problems for McDavid, Draisaitl. But then now you have these elements of like Zach Hyman, Nugent Hopkins. I know there's people I'm missing, obviously. But this Edmonton team feels like there's more pieces that can hurt you. And now you have Connor McDavid in a Western Conference Final. I'm really torn on this. Like I said, Edmonton, you have 4 players in the top 4 points. But I think this Dallas team is unlike any other team they've faced so far. This Canucks team took them to 7, and honestly, a lot of the time, this Canucks team did not feel that potent. And it was still a tight series. This is going to be a tough series either way. Give me Dallas in 7. Now Panthers, Rangers. I mentioned earlier the Rangers having 11 power play goals, 4 shorthanded goals. The reason I bring that up is because Florida gets penalized a lot. A lot, a lot, a lot. They're the most penalized team in these playoffs. They play a very physical game. Some people call them dirty. I don't think they're dirty. I think they play to the line. But they have a very potent offense as well to go along with that. This Rangers team has had a lot of rest. Like I said, they were a hat trick away from a game 7. Hat trick away from a game 7. And I can see. And the thing is, right now, Rangers are very healthy. I think everyone except for maybe Fox is playing with an injury, but I think everybody else is healthy. I don't think they leave this series healthy even if they win. I think there'll be injuries in this series on both sides, because I think these games are going to get heated. For sure, I think there's going to be some, I expect at least one big brawl in this series. I've bet against Florida in 2 rounds now, and they've proved me wrong both times. I've bet for the Rangers in 2 rounds now, and they've proved me right both times. I'm not gonna go for 3 strikes, I'm out. I'm gonna say Florida in 7. Setting up, in my opinion, Dallas Stars versus Florida Panthers Stanley Cup Final. Which as a Vegas fan is like my worst nightmare, right? But I think both of them are just so defensive, so physical. I think that's a game that works really well in the playoffs, and I think them playing each other in the Stanley Cup Final could be pretty intense. But anyways, that is that. Let me know what you've thought so far of these Stanley Cup playoffs. I look forward to watching these conference finals. I think either way, these are going to be some very entertaining games. Especially this Dallas Edmonton series. I'm going to try and catch every single game off. But thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please do a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this almost every single day. And until next time, guys,